everyone. So today I'm going to talk about endometriosis, some statistics about endometriosis, what is endometriosis, and a short personal anecdote about endometriosis. So to start, I'll explain what it is. Endometriosis basically means that cells in the uterus grow in the wrong places. That's about the most simplistic explanation that I can give. So after ovulation occurs in a female reproductive system, a lot of these cells build up and then are released during a period. Well, endometriosis is when these cells start to grow in the wrong places. They can grow outside of the uterus, they can grow in the bowels, they can grow pretty much anywhere in the entire body. And the way that the cells replicate themselves and grow outside of the uterus and fail to be eliminated properly by the body is actually pretty similar, structurally speaking, to cancer. And I did want to mention that because I think a lot of people don't really realize the full impact that these reproductive imbalances have on women and how serious it actually is. So endometriosis affects about 10 to 15% of all women of reproductive age. And it typically takes 10 to 15 years to get an accurate endometriosis diagnosis. And so women who have endometriosis, we grow up with, it's not that bad, just deal with it. Pain is normal. Just take birth control. Why don't you try getting pregnant? If you're laughing from that one, I swear to God, this is actually a genuine solution that has been presented to me and millions of other women with endometriosis. There are actually doctors out there that are advocating to get pregnant, to have a child, to try to resolve endo. And that is not a solution. Not only is that not a solution, if someone has a chronic pain and inflammation condition, I'm pretty sure the last thing you should recommend is more responsibilities to take care of another human being. It's pretty laughable. I had a doctor tell me about a year ago, oh, if you don't want kids, why don't you just remove the entire organ? And I'm like, I may not be a endo specialist, but I'm pretty sure that if it's between 2 out of 33 days of extreme pain and suffering versus menopause, which of these two is worse? You know what I mean? I feel like getting rid of the entire organ for mild endometriosis is maybe not the answer. So basically, women are in a really unfortunate spot with medical research. So medical research, especially in the US, is primarily centered around men, specifically white men. And it's really unfortunate because all of these drugs are tested on men and not on women, or women are excluded from these studies, or women are understudied because the claim is that our bodies are mysteriously complicated and impossibly difficult to understand, which is ridiculous because it's really not. You can literally look up symptothermal method. You can look up Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Toni Welscher, aka one of the best books for female reproductive information that you can ever find. Like, the research is out there. It's really not that hard to understand how a woman's body works, structurally speaking. The follicle phase, the temperatures are lower, then ovulation occurs, and the temperatures go at least 0.4 Fahrenheit above the last 6 lows. At that point, the 4th day, ovulation is then confirmed, and then your luteal phase length is typically pretty consistent until eventually estrogen comes back and that triggers the period. In other words, women are all like computers, where half of the time, roughly, it's not exactly half, and I do want to make that very clear, the first part of the cycle, we have low temperatures, then the temperatures rise, and then it stays high until estrogen comes back and the period gets triggered. And this happens over and over and over again for the exact same pattern every single month. So for any doctor to say that women are too complicated, they're clearly showing their ignorance, first off. They're clearly also showing that they don't really care, because it's not that women are any more complicated than men in terms of fertility. We're just not studied because we're not prioritized. And so my goal here is to help you understand, why is this a problem, and what is it actually like for someone who is living with endometriosis? What does it feel like? What are the struggles in life with that? And I wanted to present my perspective to you as a woman who has had endometriosis since I was about 14 years old. So back in time when I was 14, I knew something was wrong. My whole life, I've actually been able to feel my internal organs, which apparently is not something everyone can do. Apparently, it's really rare to be able to feel your internal body states to such an extremely high signal quality. It kind of freaked me out when people were like, what do you mean you can feel your lungs? I was like, what do you mean you can't? Like, is something wrong? Like, can you seriously, you can't feel your organs? Like, that was mind-blowing to me. I don't know why I can and why other people can't, but maybe it has something to do with being autistic. Oh, and on that note, I did want to mention that there is significant comorbidities between being autistic, between having ADHD, and between so many other mental struggles, mental illnesses. There's a lot of comorbidity with endometriosis, which also has me asking, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is the root cause of a lot of these mental struggles, mental issues? We do know that there is a significant link between endometriosis and depression, which kind of makes sense. If you're in pain all the time, yeah, it's easy to imagine why someone would kind of feel like life is pointless, because if everything hurts constantly all the time, it's very demotivating. But I wanted to present to you a real-time explanation and snapshot of what endo looks like in my life, hopefully to reduce ignorance on the topic. I think that it's surprisingly about as obscured of a topic as autism itself. I don't know, debatable on that. Neither one is really well understood because they're both such seriously understudied topics. But I'm going to give you a snapshot of what it's like for me. So today I am taking a sick day from work because last night I had a flare-up, an endo flare-up. And I'm going to shorten it to endo. It stands for endometriosis, just to make that clear. So what that looks like for me is it feels like electric lightning bolts are zapping me internally. I feel like electricity is shocking me from behind my back all the way down and around, sometimes even on my legs, and connecting to the belly button, connecting to the whole genital area. Basically, it feels like electric shocks. It feels like there's a little person inside who is trying to cut me open with scissors. It literally feels like I have fallen off of a bike from getting hit by a car before, okay? And endo hurts worse. I've had strep throat before. Endo hurts worse. I've had glaucoma before. Endo is about equal almost sometimes to glaucoma severity. Like if you've had glaucoma, then you probably actually can understand the level of pain I'm talking about here. But for those of you who haven't, it's a pretty extreme pain. It feels like you're being kicked and also being electrocuted, and also it feels like you're being tied. Like if it was possible to put a bunch of little strings around one side of your belly and attach it to your legs and attach it to your lungs and your arms and then tie as many knots as you can, it feels like all your organs are being shoved together and all compressed. And it results in a bunch of inflammation and bloating and water retention. But that's not even the worst of it. This is not just about pain. And that's why I wanted to make this episode. Endometriosis is not just about pain. It's not just about inflammation. It's also about immune response. So what happened last night? Well, as I was going to bed, or trying to rather, took 2 ibuprofen before bed in the hopes that I would be able to get a good night's sleep, which debatably didn't happen. So I wake up in the middle of the night consistently with these pulling cramps, these shocking sensations, and I'm stuck in the middle of this liminal state of sleep and wake where I'm actually hallucinating. I was actually saying things that weren't there in the middle of sleep. And now this is not, there is a normal type of sleep hallucination. It's called hypnagogia, I believe. You can look that up if you want to. But I'm talking about something a little bit more extreme. So endometriosis affects not only the body, but also the mind. Endometriosis can cause a lot of really intense cognitive changes in your state of mind. It can cause cognitive slowness. It can cause depression. It can cause sadness. It can cause anger and frustration. It can cause a lot of things because fundamentally what endometriosis is doing is inflaming the entire body all at once. And when all of these inflammatory cytokines are significantly heightened, that has a lot of very negative and painful downstream effects. And what I mean by that is, it sucks. It sucks that women, so many women, 190 million of us estimated, are out here suffering with what is possibly curable, Like, we don't know. It might be curable, but nobody has really studied it. Not enough. Because it's not prioritized, because women are seen as less important as men, medically speaking. And I find that really tragic. I mean, just fundamentally, that's tragic. But what's also tragic is that there's an entire culture behind this of gaslighting women's pain, saying that women are just over-exaggerating or acting like women are just overly hysterical. There used to be a medical diagnosis called hysteria. Yeah, that's what they told women that they were dealing with when they didn't want to actually help them back in the 1800s, 1900s, something like that. And so we have women that are carrying on day after day. And by the way, my endometriosis is considered extremely mild. And in fact, the only reason that I even know 100% sure that I have endometriosis is because I went into my doctor, and at first she didn't want to do a laparoscopy. She wouldn't. And so then, you know what I said? I said, if you're not willing to give me this surgery, I want you to write in the notes that you have declined me care. And as soon as I said that, that was the magic phrase, because doctors do not want to be held liable for future issues from declining care. And so if you're a woman who's been struggling to even get a laparoscopy scheduled because your doctor's resistant to it or is pushing birth control, which, by the way, is also not a solution, or pregnancy or other BS solutions like, just rely on painkillers the rest of your life, which is also not a great solution, then you can use that phrase. I am not willing to leave until you have written in your notes that you've declined care. And so I went into my doctor. I said that. Eventually she schedules the lap. She was also the surgeon, by the way. She's a great surgeon, not a great doctor. But that's how it is in life. You hear me laughing because it's a coping mechanism, because, as a woman, you get so used to going to these doctors that just don't know a single thing about your body. If I'm more informed about what's going on in my body than a doctor who has actually, theoretically been required to study it, I say theoretically because I've met a lot of doctors who clearly demonstrate that is not the case, and then maybe something needs to change. Maybe we should start believing when women say that they're in pain. Maybe we should start taking women's pain seriously instead of just dismissing it. Oh, you're over-exaggerating. Oh, you're overly sensitive. Oh, that's normal to be in severe pain. No, indeed, it is not normal to be doubled down in a fetal position for multiple days. No, it is not normal to feel your entire lungs, diaphragm, and stomach, and all of this bloat up and expand to 10x the size. None of this is normal. It's not normal to look like you're pregnant when you're not. It's not normal to have all of this pain internally. And so this is what they mean when they say endometriosis is an invisible disability, because so many women with this problem carry on. You don't get to opt out of life and not do all of the things you're responsible for. And I'm in an extremely privileged position to be able to take a sick day when I have flares. There's a lot of people who can't afford that, who aren't able to do that. They have to carry on with their daily lives, raising kids, going to work, all these other things, while pretending that they're okay when they're not. And I don't think that's right. As a society, I really don't think that's right. I think that women should be allowed to talk about this without being stigmatized. I think it's bullshit how much menstruation or periods is seen as a source of shame. Like, people are afraid to talk about it. It's so weird, especially, all the women I've talked to about it have been extremely receptive. They're not ashamed of themselves at all, and awesome. Like, all of y'all are amazing, and I appreciate you, and that's how it should be. But there have been so many men that I've met that are just like, wait, a period? Why are you talking about that? You know? And to me, this is mind-boggling. I'm like, what do you mean, why am I talking about this extremely painful activity that I have to experience 1 or 2 days out of every 33 days? You know, if you were in pain twice a month, or even 3 times a month, or even 4 times a month, like, wouldn't you want it to be destigmatized and not to be a taboo topic? Like, what is it that people are so afraid of if we start talking about periods? Seriously, I don't understand. And so that fear dates back to a lot of this fake conditioning. I believe it started in the witch era. This is just my basic memory of that, where people saw women as being unclean when they were menstruating, even though that's actually scientifically inaccurate. But, you know, most people who are operating from those reactions aren't thinking with logic, unfortunately. And so you get these women who are suffering, and they have to hide it. They have to hide it extremely, because how are you gonna tell somebody, hey, I'm in severe pain from this, when talking about it is not encouraged, or talking about it is seen as socially taboo or socially unacceptable. I remember when I was 16 years old, I was at school, I was crying because I was in so much pain, and the teachers wouldn't even allow me to go to the bathroom. Because when you're a kid in the U.S., in the U.S. school system, they assume that kids are going to do bad things in the bathroom, and so they don't let you go. They will literally, in public schools in the U.S., prevent you from going to the bathroom. So I had to sit in my seat, having to go to the bathroom, having to change my cup, which is another thing that we should talk about, and suffering from endometriosis, sitting there crying, staring at the clock, wondering if this pain was ever going to end, and just wishing for a little bit of compassion from these teachers. Luckily, thank God, I had a lot of teachers who did understand, who were compassionate, and those teachers, you were all lifesavers, you know? Like, if you're a teacher and you're helping girls and women through pain like this, if you're a teacher who spends your spare time talking to kids at lunch about their problems and helping them through life, you are one of the best people in the entire world, and my heart appreciates you so much, because teachers like that are literally the difference between kids being able to survive their lives versus not. And so I think, you know, part of it is I don't understand why women's issues are seen as so much less important. If everyone in the world had periods, it would be as normal to talk about as toilet paper. You know, do people start feeling shame if I talk about toilet paper? No, they don't. So then why is it seen as shameful to talk about tampons, to talk about pads, to talk about menstrual cups, which, by the way, in my opinion, are amazing to release cramps and reduce pain and inflammation, but not for everybody, so there's your disclaimer. But the point is that there really should be some more balance in these conversations, and I wish there was some way for people to understand this is a lot of pain. This is a lot of pain that I go through every single month, every single cycle. And I'm saying month to represent cycle, but my actual cycle is about 33 days. And that's another thing. People think that if you don't have a perfect 28-day cycle, that something is wrong, but that's more misinformation. Women are really not that complicated, at least hormonally. Maybe there's other things that make us complicated, which might be a different podcast episode. But we're no more complicated than a computer that demonstrates the same pattern every single time. It's the exact same pattern every single time. Same temperature pattern, same cervical pattern, same cervical fluid patterns. It's the same pattern every single time. We're really not that complicated. Yes, there's other hormones involved at play. Yes, we don't have only one to work with. We have multiple. Estrogen, testosterone, a little bit, for women. And progesterone is the main second hormone there. And then, of course, prostaglandins, which are also heightened in endometriosis, which is Another terrible, terrible feature of this condition. So prostaglandins directly trigger more autoimmune responses within the body. So in other words, endometriosis affects the whole body and brain and the entire immune response. And that's what I'm saying. The immune response in the body and in the brain. Now, if you type in neurological conditions that are caused by immune response issues, you're going to get a long list. You're going to get the longest list ever. And so what I wish that people understood that it's possible that maybe endometriosis is not a comorbidity. Maybe it's a root cause. Maybe we should start looking into that. They took these fetuses or babies, I guess, babies that had died young, and they did some exploration to look at, which ones, what were their health conditions and all that. And they actually found endometriosis present in infants. So if this is something that has been present from infancy, what other interactions has it had all along? What other interactions with autoimmune issues does that create? I mean, if endometriosis changes the entire expression of immune response and significantly increases prostaglandins, increasing things like TNF-alpha and other really problematic inflammatory biomarkers, who's to say that mental illness is actually mental at all? Maybe mental illness is actually an extension of physical issues tied to immune response. I understand that there's a lot of possibilities. I would love to tell you the answers. I really would, but I don't have them. I have my theories on how things are connected, but with the extremely limited amount of available research, it's difficult to even talk about this because someone who doesn't have endometriosis can't understand the level of pain that I'm talking about usually. I mean, unless you've been burned alive, gotten 2nd or 3rd degree burns, or maybe if you've been electrocuted, like actually, I've been electrocuted briefly before, and I also have endo. And between the two, I'm not sure which one's worse. Probably endo's worse because at least I know electrocution is going to end at some point, whereas endo, I just know every single time I'm going to have to suffer through it again. And so women are demonized and basically suppressed from talking about issues that we directly experience in our lives, in our daily lives. And it doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. Why is it okay to talk about somebody getting hit by a car and logically understanding that they're in pain from that, but then it's not okay to talk about, like, periods? It's absurd. Why is it fine to talk about all these drugs which resolve male ejaculation issues, and yet talking about conditions where women are in severe pain and need help, they're just dismissed by their doctors? Go take more birth control. No, birth control fakes the body into thinking it's pregnant. Birth control does not resolve the problem. In fact, birth control might even make things worse by increasing estrogen, which, guess what feeds on estrogen? That's right, endometriosis. So all of these, quote, solutions that doctors are offering to women with endometriosis are making our problems worse. You're telling us to just rely on painkillers. How do you think some women get hooked on opioids? If you're in pain constantly, I'm considered one of the lucky ones because my endometriosis was mild. And then doctors sometimes will act like, oh, just have it removed or have surgery, have it lasered off. None of these solutions work because, yeah, I can laser it off once, but then what happens? It grows back the next time. It grows back. It redevelops. Some women who have stage 3 endometriosis can literally have all of their organs fused together for 20 or 30 years and not even know it. They won't even know it because they would never check it because you can't see it on a scan. The only way to get a true endometriosis diagnosis is to have a laparoscopy. And that's another thing. Like, how in the world is it 2025 and we don't have better technology for this? How do we not have better ways of diagnosing this without cutting open a woman? Like, straight up, if this was any disease that was affecting any kind of male whatsoever, any guy, we would have much better solutions, and we might already have a cure for it. And yeah, I understand that science is difficult, and that especially medicine is difficult because the entire body system is always connected. But, maybe we should start with requiring doctors to actually know what a follicle phase is, what a luteal phase is. All of these basic terms that so many doctors just don't even know. And I'm not talking about like everyday doctors. I'm talking about GYNs. I'm talking about specialists that have actually asked me, what do you mean luteal phase? And I'm like, you're supposed to be the expert here. So if there's no expert for any of this, if there's nobody who has solutions, what are we expected to do? Just sit there and suffer? And the truth is, yeah, because up to this point, women weren't even really allowed to share their opinions, to even speak. I mean, women couldn't even vote until 1920, and if we include Native Americans in that, 1924. So that means that men have had how many hundreds of extra years of sharing their problems and studying them? And don't even get me started on the history of birth control. How do you think birth control was created? It's really fucked up, I'll tell you. They forced black women to take up to 20 times the amount of our modern day dosages of birth control. They forced women to be sterilized against their will. So basically all of our modern drug progress, and I'm using modern in quotes here because let's be real, it's not that great for women in the different healthcare systems. It was based on non-consensual pain towards women and racism. That's the history of women's birth control. Racism. And so many worse things. I'm not going to get into it completely. It's just crazy. Women just aren't believed. They aren't believed or they aren't listened to. And I don't understand. How loud do I have to be? Do I have to shout this from the rooftops? I mean, if that's what it takes, I will. I'll do it. I'll do it if I need to, but in order to get to that point of people listening to these issues and taking them seriously, there still has to be a baseline of compassion and understanding, aka women have to be seen as human. Women have to be seen as actual humans instead of being sexualized, instead of being objectified. They have to be seen as actual people deserving of respect, deserving of being listened to. And honestly, I think that's where the first bottleneck happens. Because if you don't see a woman as a person, instead, if she is just seen as somebody who can help men obtain their needs, well, then you're going to be shouting into the void for quite a while. Anyways, thanks for listening.